The manager leaned across the counter and whispered something that made the pregnant waitress freeze. "If you don't do exactly what I say, you won't walk out of this restaurant with your job, or your reputation." She looked down at her trembling hands, then at the small curve of her belly beneath her uniform. She was only minutes away from discovering that the man who had threatened her had made the biggest mistake of his life. Before we begin, if stories about courage, family, and standing up against injustice touch your heart, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because what happened next proved that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one with the strongest reason to fight. It was a busy Friday afternoon at the Grand Meridian, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling, polished tables filled the dining room, and waiters moved between guests carrying plates with practiced smiles. Among them was 29-year-old Elena Carter. Elena had worked there for almost 2 years. She wasn't the fastest waitress, and she didn't pretend to be perfect. But she remembered customers' names, checked on elderly guests twice, and always made sure children received something extra when their parents looked exhausted. That afternoon, however, Elena was struggling. She placed a tray on a table and quietly pressed one hand against her lower back. "Are you all right?" asked an elderly customer. Elena smiled. "I'm fine, ma'am, just a little tired." The truth was that she was 6 months pregnant. Her husband, Adrian Carter, had begged her to stop working months earlier. Adrian owned a large security and logistics company and could easily support their family. But Elena had always been fiercely independent. "I don't want to spend my pregnancy sitting at home feeling helpless," she had told him. Adrian had smiled and kissed her forehead. "You could never be helpless." That sentence had stayed with her. But Adrian was away that day handling an important business matter several hours from the city. Elena didn't know that by the end of the afternoon, he would be racing back. Her manager, Victor Hale, watched her from across the restaurant. Victor was 45, always perfectly dressed, always smiling when customers were watching. But employees knew another side of him. He had a temper, and he hated anyone who made his restaurant look inefficient. Elena had already requested lighter duties because of her pregnancy, but Victor had ignored the request. When a glass slipped from Elena's hand and shattered on the floor, Victor immediately stormed over. "What happened?" "I'm sorry," Elena said. "My hand slipped." Victor stared at the broken glass. "You're becoming a problem." Elena looked at him in disbelief. "A problem? You're slower. You take more breaks. Customers are waiting longer. I've never refused a table." "I didn't say you refused them." His voice became colder. "I said you're becoming a problem." Elena swallowed her embarrassment. "I'll be more careful." Victor stepped closer. "You'd better be." Then he walked away. Elena took a breath and returned to work. She didn't know that Victor's frustration wasn't really about the broken glass. He had recently received complaints from corporate management about staff expenses. He wanted to cut several employees and replace them with cheaper workers. Elena was one of the employees he had decided to remove. But there was a problem. She was pregnant. Victor didn't want the legal trouble that might come from firing her openly. So he had decided to force her to quit. For the next several hours, Elena was given the heaviest section of the restaurant. She carried trays, stood for long periods, and rushed from table to table. At one point, another waitress quietly approached her. "Elena, you need to sit down." "I'll be okay." "You're pale." Elena smiled weakly. "My husband would say the same thing." "Then listen to him." Elena laughed softly. "I probably should." But before she could sit, Victor appeared. "Table 14 needs service." "I'll go." "And table 7 is waiting." "I'll handle it." "And stop disappearing every 10 minutes." Elena stared at him. "I haven't been disappearing." Victor lowered his voice. "I don't care what you think you're entitled to. You're an employee." Elena's eyes filled with frustration. "I'm just asking for reasonable consideration." Victor leaned closer. "Reasonable consideration doesn't pay my bills." Elena stepped back. "This isn't right." Victor's face hardened. "Careful." She said nothing. That evening, Elena was carrying a tray toward the kitchen when she suddenly felt a sharp discomfort. She stopped. Her breathing became shallow. A coworker noticed immediately. "Elena, I just need a minute." She placed the tray down. Victor saw her. "What are you doing?" "I don't feel well." "You have customers. I need to sit." Victor's voice became louder. "You're always tired. You're always uncomfortable. If you can't do the job, maybe you shouldn't be here." Several employees looked over. Elena's face turned red. "Please don't speak to me like that." Victor stepped forward. "You want to know what happens if you keep refusing orders?" Elena remained silent. You lose your job. She looked at him. Are you firing me? Victor smiled. Not yet. Then he leaned closer. But I can make sure you never work in this industry again. Elena felt a chill. What does that mean? It means you should think carefully before making me angry. She didn't respond. Victor pointed toward the private hallway. Come with me. Elena hesitated. Why, now? She followed him reluctantly. The hallway was quiet. Victor closed the door behind them. Elena immediately felt uncomfortable. What do you want? Victor placed a document on the desk. Sign this. She looked down. It was a resignation letter. Her heart sank. No. Victor's expression changed. Excuse me, I won't sign this. You're resigning voluntarily. No, I'm not. Victor leaned against the desk. You don't understand how this works. I understand perfectly. You're pregnant. You're emotional. You're slowing down the team. If you resign today, everyone walks away happy. Elena shook her head. I won't sign something that isn't true. Victor's voice dropped. Then things become difficult. They already are. Victor stared at her. You think your husband can protect you? Elena froze. How do you know about my husband? I know more than you think. He pointed toward the resignation letter. Sign it. No. Victor stepped closer. You really want to challenge me? Elena's hands trembled, but she didn't move. I just want to be treated fairly. Victor slammed his hand against the desk. You have no idea how much trouble you can cause yourself. Elena instinctively placed one hand over her belly. Victor noticed. You're not going to get sympathy from me. That sentence broke something inside her. Not because she was afraid of losing her job, but because she suddenly realized that someone was deliberately trying to intimidate her while she was carrying a child. Her voice became quiet. You don't scare me. Victor laughed. You should be scared. Elena reached into her pocket for her phone. Victor noticed. Who are you calling? My husband. Victor's smile disappeared. Put the phone down. No, I'm warning you. Elena pressed Adrian's name. The call connected. She didn't even have time to speak. Adrian heard her breathing. Elena, she whispered. Adrian. His voice immediately changed. What happened? I'm okay. You're not okay. Victor grabbed the phone from her hand. The line went silent. Victor looked at the screen. Then he heard Adrian's voice through the speaker. Who is this? Victor ended the call. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Then Victor looked at Elena. You just made a serious mistake. But Victor didn't know Adrian. He didn't know that Adrian Carter had spent 15 years building a company whose employees were trained to protect people in difficult situations. He didn't know Adrian's wife was the most important person in his life. And he certainly didn't know that Adrian had already begun moving. Across the city, Adrian stood inside his office when the call ended. His face became completely still. His assistant looked at him. Sir. Adrian picked up his jacket. Get the car. Where are we going? The Grand Meridian. Should I call the team? Adrian looked at him. All of them. 20 minutes later, 3 dark vehicles were moving through the city. Inside the first car, Adrian stared at his phone. He called Elena again. No answer. Again. Nothing. His hands tightened. Drive faster. The driver nodded. Meanwhile, Elena was still inside the private office. Victor pointed at the door. Go back to work. Elena looked at him. You took my phone. I told you to leave. I want my phone. Victor held it up. You can have it when your shift ends. My husband is worried. That isn't my problem. Elena walked toward him. Give it back. Victor stepped into her path. You're done. Elena's eyes widened. What? Go home. You're firing me. Victor smiled. You quit. No, I didn't. Victor opened the door. Get out. Elena stood there, humiliated and frightened. She looked around the hallway. No one came. Then she heard something outside. Cars. Several cars. The sound of doors opening. Footsteps. Victor looked toward the restaurant entrance. His expression changed. Through the glass doors, several professionally dressed security personnel entered. Customers began turning their heads. Then Adrian walked in. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't running. He simply walked through the restaurant with a calmness that made everyone notice him. His eyes searched the room. Then he saw Elena. His expression softened immediately. Elena. She couldn't hold herself together anymore. She walked toward him. Adrian reached her and gently placed his hands around her shoulders. Are you hurt? She shook her head. No. Did he threaten you? Elena looked toward Victor. Adrian followed her gaze. The room became silent. Victor tried to smile. Mr. Carter, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Adrian didn't answer. He looked at Elena. Did he threaten you? She nodded. Victor immediately stepped forward. I was simply managing an employee who was refusing to follow instructions. Adrian finally looked at him. My wife. Victor swallowed. I didn't know she was. You knew. Victor stopped. Adrian's voice remained calm. You knew she was pregnant. Victor said nothing. And you took her phone. Silence. You locked her in an office. Victor's face became pale. I didn't lock. And you forced her to sign a resignation. Adrian stepped forward. You threatened my wife while she was carrying our child. Victor looked around desperately. Mr. Carter, please. We can resolve this privately. Adrian shook his head. No. Victor's voice trembled. I apologize. Adrian stared at him. You're not apologizing. Because you understand what you did. He pointed toward Elena. You're apologizing because you finally realized who she is married to. The restaurant remained silent, but Elena gently touched Adrian's arm. Adrian. He turned toward her. She whispered, I don't want revenge. Adrian's expression softened. What do you want? Elena looked at Victor. I want him to understand that people shouldn't be treated this way. Adrian nodded. Then he looked at his security team. Make sure she's safe. 2 guards stepped aside, giving Elena space. Adrian turned back toward Victor. You're going to answer for what you did. Victor lowered his head. The company's corporate representatives were called. The restaurant's security footage was reviewed. Employees gave statements. The resignation letter Victor had tried to force on Elena was discovered. And then another employee stepped forward. A young waitress named Mia. I want to say something. Everyone turned. Mia was shaking. Victor stared at her. You should be careful. Mia looked at Adrian. He's done this before. Victor's face changed. Mia continued. He threatened me last month when I asked for my unpaid wages. Another employee spoke. He did it to me too. Then another. And another. One by one, the silence broke. Victor had spent years intimidating people because he believed nobody would challenge him. But now the people he had frightened were finally standing together. Elena watched quietly. She realized something important. Adrian hadn't come to rescue a helpless woman. He had come to stand beside a woman who had already found the courage to stand for herself. Later that night, Elena sat in the back seat beside Adrian. The city lights passed outside the window. For several minutes, neither spoke. Finally Adrian took her hand. You scared me today. I know. I thought something had happened to you. I was scared too. Adrian looked at her. Why didn't you call me sooner? I didn't want to interrupt your work. He smiled sadly. Elena, you are never an interruption. She rested her head against his shoulder. I didn't want people to think I married you so I wouldn't have to work. Adrian looked down at her. You never have to prove your worth by suffering. Tears filled her eyes. I just wanted to be strong. You are strong. He gently touched her hand. But being strong doesn't mean you have to stand alone. Elena smiled. That night, when they arrived home, Adrian helped her inside. She sat on the couch. He brought her water. Then he placed his hand gently against her belly. A tiny movement followed. Adrian smiled. Did you feel that? Elena laughed softly. Yes. He looked at her. Our little one already knows when Dad is worried. She smiled. Maybe she's telling you to relax. Adrian laughed. Definitely your child. For the first time that day, Elena felt safe. But the story didn't end with Victor losing his position. The following week, the restaurant's ownership announced a complete workplace review. Employees were encouraged to report mistreatment without fear. Victor was removed from management pending formal investigation. And Elena, she was offered a position overseeing employee welfare and training. But she declined, not because she hated the restaurant, because she had discovered something more important. She wanted to create a place where people didn't have to choose between earning a living and being treated with dignity. With Adrian's support, Elena eventually opened a small cafe. She called it Second Chance. Her first employees were people who had once been ignored, dismissed, or treated as if they didn't matter. On the cafe wall, she placed a simple wooden sign. It read, "Everyone who walks through this door deserves respect." Years later, that sign was still there. And whenever a new employee asked Elena why she had started the cafe, she told them the truth. Because one day, someone tried to convince me that I was powerless. She would smile, and that was the day I discovered how powerful I really was. The most important lesson wasn't that Elena's husband arrived with guards. It wasn't that Victor finally faced consequences. It wasn't even that Elena built a successful business. The real lesson was that dignity should never depend on someone's position, wealth, or power. Elena had been a waitress. Victor had been a manager. Adrian was a powerful businessman. But none of those titles determined their worth. What mattered was how they treated people when they believed nobody was watching. And sometimes, the strongest person isn't the one who enters a room surrounded by guards. Sometimes, it's the person standing alone in a quiet office, hands trembling, heart racing, but still saying, "No. I deserve to be treated with respect." So if you've ever been underestimated, intimidated, or made to feel like your voice didn't matter, remember Elena. You don't have to become cruel to become strong. You don't have to hurt others to protect yourself. And you don't have to stand alone. Courage can begin with one quiet sentence. I know my worth. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. Because sometimes, one story can remind someone that they are stronger than they think. And sometimes, the person everyone overlooks is the person who eventually inspires everyone else.